Remember when you were little? Good morning, Coal Valley. Good morning. Oh, those are my kids. So, you guys are new to Coal Valley. I'm Mrs. Wood, and some of these guys had me for a librarian. How many of you guys had me as a librarian? And then the rest of the time I was a music teacher and worship director over there, and now I get to be at both campuses and watch you guys grow up. It's really fun seeing you guys. This is my daughter-in-law, Michelle. Hello. Michelle's a graduate of Coal Valley, so she's going to talk to you a little bit. So, I like telling stories, so this is my story of God, gratitude, and hope. And I better get started, but I just want you guys to know how much I love you. And your prayers and your love and support has just been so awesome. And it's, when you see me crying, it's mostly because of the love that God has given me through you guys. So, okay, so 2 Corinthians 4:16-18 says, and this is out of the Message. I just love, I call it my Idaho verse because it talks about potatoes in here, but anyway. So, we're not giving up. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart on us. On the inside, where God is making new life, not a day goes by without his unfolding grace. These hard times are small potatoes compared to the coming good times, the lavish celebration prepared for us. There's far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today, gone tomorrow, but the things we can't see now will last forever. So, I've got to be able to read here. On a warm, you guys, I got a tear on my glass and it's just right where I want to read. Okay. So on a warm Saturday on July 20th, 2013, I sat with Mrs. Domain and my daughter Bethany at the outdoor wedding of a former Coal Valley student, Amanda Gallivan. Moments before the wedding started, Mrs. Domain told me that she and Mr. Carr were trying to find a way for me to be able to work with the junior high worship team this year. I was really happy about this because it had confirmed what God had been asking me to focus on this year, and that was worship. He'd also been showing me that worship would be something I would need in the coming year, and I sensed it might be something that was difficult, and that's why I would need to know how to worship better. Our son Taylor's recent wedding was fresh on my mind. I was reliving the very happy day we had had just 28 days prior. It was an outdoor wedding and sweet and beautiful like Amanda's was. After Amanda's brief ceremony, I was just about to meet the mom of another former Coal Valley student. Tom Murock's mom was there, and that's Amanda's cousin. I was going to meet her because her son had died in Afghanistan last year while serving our country, and he was a friend of my kids. But before I could meet his mom, my oldest son, Sean, rushed up to me and pulling me away from the other guests, told me that Taylor had drowned in the river. After I told Mrs. Domain and Tom's aunt what had happened, Sean rushed us to the police car. And our first gift God gave us that day was Officer Stan Nichols, Kevin and Christy's dad. He had been placed by God at the accident of Taylor, and it was so comforting having a Christian policeman there that we knew well. He was there to take us to the hospital to join the rest of our family. When I got into the car, I knew the first thing that we needed to do was pray. And after I prayed, I tried to comprehend all that had happened as I listened to Stan tell me what had happened on the river. I realized I was only 10 days away from speaking at a ladies' book club. After reading the book, 1,000 Gifts, I was going to share how that book had taught me about gratitude and it helped heal my voice, which had been paralyzed. During that time, could you go to the next slide, please? 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So at that moment in the car with Stan and Sean and Bethany, I realized that I had to decide if I really believed this verse, and if I really believed everything I've been telling you guys all your life, and if I really believed everything that Taylor believed. And I knew that I did. I started thinking about Taylor's life and what had happened in his life. So if we could go to the next slide. From the time Taylor was in my tummy, I knew he was going to be different from our calm firstborn son, Sean. We didn't have ultrasounds then, but I said, this baby's going to be a boy, he's going to be a mover and a shaker, and he's going to play the drums. I know this because he started on my ribs. So Taylor Royce Wood joined the Wood family. Taylor liked to do many things, especially sing and dance and play his guitar. He was a drummer too. He loved to sing about Jesus. When he got older, he loved to skateboard, ski, snowboard, and he had no fear. No fear of anything. And Gary and I had to give him to the Lord at a very young age. Pretty soon, God completed our amazing family with Drew and Bethany. Each child, different and unique, was loved and treasured. Taylor tried really hard to be a good boy, and soon realized he couldn't do it on his own. So one day, he was sitting thinking about his problems, and I don't think it was with his finger in his nose, but he was thinking about his problems. He one day told me that he deserved all the spankings that he got, so he was pretty proud of the fact that he had the most spankings in the whole family too. But he knew a lot about Jesus dying on the cross when he was 4 years old and realized that he had not asked him into his heart to be Lord of his life. So he asked me to help him, and he told Jesus he knew he was a sinner, and he asked him to come into his heart and be Lord of his life and take him to heaven someday. After he gave his heart to Jesus, he was so happy. Our whole family could see the difference in his heart. He decided to become an immediate evangelist. He told 2 twin boys in our car, who got into trouble a lot more than he did, that they needed Jesus in their hearts if they wanted to go to heaven with him. And one of those boys asked Jesus into his heart in our car. Taylor decided that this was going to be a fun adventure with Jesus to share his love with others. But one day, our son Sean came running into the house and said that Taylor had told the neighbor boy he was going to hell. So I took a deep breath, and I ran outside to fix the problem. Taylor was on the swing set next to the fence of our very nice neighbors and their 12-year-old son that he had told me was going to hell. I said, Taylor, what are you doing? Swinging. He was on the swing. Did you tell Junior something? Yep. And in his very cute accent without his R's, he said, I told him he was going to hell because he's a Mormon. I said, Taylor, honey, you don't go to hell if you're a Mormon. You go to hell if you haven't asked Jesus into your heart and made him Lord of your life. You should have asked Junior if he has Jesus in his heart. So he got off the swing and put his hands on his hips. Junior, do you have Jesus in your heart? Junior laughed and said, yes, I do. And I said, well, Taylor, it looks like you don't have anything to worry about. Taylor, at that same age, we lived in Hell's Canyon with Idaho Power, and he started to see how amazing God's creation was. He began to love the outdoors. He loved fishing and hiking and camping. He knew God had created a big, wonderful world for him to enjoy. With his love for adventure in the water, we had to trust him each day knowing that God was in control of Taylor's life. Taylor liked to do silly things and have fun. He loved to make us laugh. When he was 10 years old, he started at Coal Valley Christian. We had homeschooled up until that time. And he was in Miss Souther's class. Taylor made good friends at Coal Valley, and he and his friend Jameson, who is in that picture, started to see that there were lonely kids at our school. They knew that Jesus would want them to be friends with them, so they started to do fun things and bring them to our house for lots of activities, making lonely kids feel welcomed. God helped Taylor to love the kids who didn't feel loved at school, at church, and in his neighborhood. He would often ask me to pray for his friends. He always told his friends when he was saying goodbye, hey man, I love you. His guy friends didn't want to say it back. So Taylor wouldn't let him leave until they'd said it. Come on, say it back, say it back. You can't leave until you say it back. He had learned the meaning of agape and phileo love. He wanted his friends to always know that they were loved by him, their brother, and by God, their Father. He continued his adventures with Jesus and finding people to help him love and give encouragement to. And one of the ways was by giving his loyal friends a domino necklace. So now you know we have a domino. Did everyone get one? So if you don't, we have some more in the back. So, one of the friends Taylor met was Trevor Middleton. Trevor was new at Coal Valley, and when Taylor met him, Trevor didn't know if life was worth living. He's away at college today, but he wrote a note to all of you and wanted me to read this. Taylor reached out to me in a very dark part of my life. I just arrived at Coal Valley, and I had unwittingly made a social misstep in the first few weeks of school. The details aren't important. The kids ostracized me. Just like every high school kid, I of course blew it out of proportion. This was where Taylor stepped in. He had no idea, nor did he care what other people thought about me at that school. He didn't know I was struggling. He saw me alone in the library one day and decided he wanted to know me. That's how Taylor was. Everyone was interesting and special to him. He brought me to lunch with his best friend Jameson and saved my life without knowing it. He and Jameson weren't conventional Christians. They weren't buttoned down like the rest. Taylor had brought me into the circle with him and Jameson, and they were, and have been to this day, two of the strongest Christian men I've ever met. The both of them were strong with the Bible. They had compassion. There was no judgment among us, just faith and love of life. Taylor did exactly what he did best. He included someone. There was no pretense or interest in fixing a lost soul. He just saw through my awkwardness and decided he wanted me around. Taylor Wood was the older brother I never had, and with God's help, he saved my life. Trevor is just one of the many friends that Taylor saw through Jesus and encouraged. We want people to know, we need to go to the next picture. There's Trevor. Trevor in college, he's at Gonzaga. And then the next one. Okay, this is Taylor's senior picture. We want people to know that Taylor was not perfect. He was a sinner just like me and you. There were times when Taylor wasn't sure what God wanted him to do, times when he was hurt and selfish, plus times he was confused and made mistakes that many teenagers make. But he never forgot that God loved him and Jesus still helped him to care for others. It was God working through Taylor. As a parent with a child who felt called to reach out to people with challenges, we struggled to know how to help Taylor reach out and still keep boundaries in his life. But in the end, Taylor's gift and focus on seeing others as Christ would prove to be a seed that was planted in their lives. Many of these guys who had accepted Christ have decided to follow with a whole heart. Or I have people coming up to me quite often saying, hey, I work with this person who knows Taylor, and they never want to talk about God, and now they want to talk about God all the time. So there's so much that we're grateful for in Taylor's death. One of the greatest gifts God has given us through Taylor is his wife, Michelle. And she wants to share with you about Taylor and her years at Coal Valley. Okay.
I'll never forget the day that I got that call. The call that led up to the moment that forever changed my life. I was walking to the Albertsons on State and 16th Street. I was on my way to mail a birthday present to my friend Carrie, who lives in Arizona, when I got a phone call from an unfamiliar phone number. When I answered, a man with a husky, abrupt voice said, "Is this Michelle Wood?" And I said, "Yes, who is this?" And he said he was a police officer, and he needed to meet up with me, whether it was at my home or someplace else. I said I would meet with him at the Albertsons that I was walking to. And so I got off the phone with him, and I was a little sketched out because I didn't know if this was a real officer. So I called up my friend Lupi, and I asked her what I should do, and she told me that I should call dispatch and see if they had actually sent out a police car. And sure enough, they did. I was really confused and thought that maybe a person at the bar that I worked at last night had drank too much and gotten in trouble, as there were 3 different biker gangs in town that night. That was really the only thing that I could think of. They had to have been investigating something. So I was rounding the corner to the Albertsons, and that's when I really started to worry. The officer had told me that there would be an unmarked black SUV car waiting with the patrol car. And that really didn't set well with me for some reason. And so I tried to call Taylor, and his phone rang and rang until voicemail. And I couldn't get a hold of any of his friends that he was out with that day. So the second I walked up to the officer and the two other people waiting for me, all I could say was, "Are all my loved ones all right?" Right after that, the officer asked me if I was married to Taylor, and he asked me if I knew that Taylor was on the river that day. And I said, "Yeah, I know that he was on the river. He was really wanting to try out wake surfing and river surfing." And the officer proceeded to tell me that he was boogie boarding, and he had fallen off the board and was dragged under the current. He had bought a leash that morning, and he had somehow attached it to the board and attached it to his ankle. And he had fallen off the board and got dragged down, and he had gotten caught under a bunch of brush and branches, and he couldn't get back up. So the leash is really what caused him to drown. It hit me so hard when he said he was pronounced dead. Before that, I kept clinging to a shred of hope that the officer would say, "However, we revived him, and he's in really rough condition, but he'll be okay." That was never uttered, and as I stepped into that black SUV, all I could say was, "We just got married." Taylor and I hit it off from the instant that we met. Taylor had such a happy and adventurous spirit. It was hard for me not to want to be with him. It was hard for a lot of people not to want to be with Taylor. He made everybody feel special and genuinely cared. He continually made me want to be a better friend. He was such a true north. He challenged me every day. For those of you who don't know me, I am Michelle Wood. I am formerly known as Michelle True here at Coal Valley. And I had the most blissful 28 days of marriage with my husband, Taylor. 7 years ago, I was sitting in the same seat that you're sitting in. I didn't have the awesome gym that you guys have, which I'm kind of bummed about. I did get assigned a piece of the plywood, though, which is pretty cool. So it's somewhere in there. But I did graduate in 2006. And let me tell you this, in high school, I felt like I was floating. Now, I don't want to confuse you when I say floating. I mean it in a more spiritual sense, as in the way my relationship was with God. Boring, out of lull, asleep, lost. I was so lost and so without God. But let me tell you, I sure could name off all the books of the Bible, and I knew them in order, and I knew a lot of Bible verses. Christianity was ingrained in me since I was a little kid, and my relationship with God was lukewarm, and I was taken for granted. The years after high school, I remained the same. I was out of touch with God, and honestly, I really didn't care. I started working at a bar downtown in 2009, and I didn't think anything of the sinful atmosphere and culture that I was about to engulf myself in. I was actually really proud to say that I worked at a bar. When people my age found out that I was a bartender, I got so much more respect. So, of course, I freaking loved this job. I was in control of my life, and I was having a blast drinking every night until 6 in the morning. I got a drink at work. I'd go to breakfast in the morning to cure the hangover. I did hate that a lot of my friends smoked cigarettes, but soon enough, I started to smoke and chew. I was that girl with a can of chew in her back pocket. I didn't chew for that long, but it was just a lot of bad habits. But one night at work, Taylor happened to come into my work to play pool with some of his friends. And and this is how we reconnected. Taylor and I started to go out on what we call nacho dates. And then the nacho dates soon turned into real dates, and then we started to real date, actually dating. But I remember how much I loved that Taylor was a Christian. I loved that he loved God. And it's crazy how I'd fallen so far away from God. But deep down I knew that I wanted to be with a God-fearing man. Taylor was so firm on his beliefs, and there was no gray area with him. I quit smoking a month or two into dating Taylor. Later he told me that he never would have dated a girl who smoked, but he loved me so much from the beginning, and he just knew that God created us to be each other's soulmates, so he knew I would quit. Taylor never really liked me working at the bar. It was the cause of a lot of our fights in the beginning of our relationship. Before Taylor and I got married, he wrote what love was to him based off of 1 Corinthians 13. Part of what he wrote was this: when we love legitimately, we stay away from evil and sinful practices and places. I realized that Taylor was trying so hard to reach me, to get me to see the black and white, to see the honor and wholesome life. But I just wasn't ready to see that yet. I now understand that I was right in the middle of the battle for my soul. I sit in front of you today not to tell you how unfortunate my life has ended up, because God has given me a sustained faith and my eyes are fixed on the promise and on what's next. He's really shown me comfort through his gifts, and it's the warmest feeling ever, knowing that even though my earthly husband is gone, my God is taking care of me personally and speaking to my love language, as I am his bride. Let me explain what I mean by love language. Before me and Taylor got married, we read a book called The 5 Love Languages. And everybody has one or maybe even 2 specific love languages that they speak, such as acts of service or quality time. And I came to realize that one of my strong languages was receiving gifts. Memories are such a gift to me. For example, I got to spend my honeymoon in Maui, every day snorkeling and holding hands with my husband. I got to spend my favorite holiday, the 4th of July, in Hawaii with Taylor. I'll never forget one day, Taylor came home from work at the car shop, and he was so wounded and down because the guys at work gave him such a hard time for getting an oil stick stuck. I guess he got it stuck inside of this brand new 2013 Charger, and he couldn't get it out. And he said that they were really crude and called them nasty names, and I said, well, you held your own and you told them what was up, right? And I'll never forget how his eyes softened when he looked at me. And in such a kind tone, he said, honey, that just isn't me. I don't talk cross like them, and I don't retaliate back. Some of them are from jail too, and they just don't get me. I didn't get that concept because I would have handled it by saying some sassy comment and slamming the door. Taylor showed me the meaning of unwavering patience and brotherly love, and that's just another gift along the way that I treasure. And then another great memory is when Taylor and I were talking about his sister Bethany. One day when we were driving home from being in his parents' house, and we were talking about her current dating situation. I will leave with that. She is single now. However, Taylor loved his sister so much, and every time we talked about her, he lit up. It was really cool to see. But he looked over at me and he said, Michelle, I really hope that one day you and Bethany get to be really close. And I honestly think that you guys could be best friends. And you know, I've been told by others who have lost spouses that one of the hardest parts of the loss is the empty side of the bed that their spouse slept on. Bethany and I share a room, and through this, God has given me another gift, a person to talk to and laugh with and sleep next to every night. God is good, and I know Taylor would be so ecstatic that she is now one of my best friends. God gives you and ask you if you're leaving gifts along the way. People ask me a lot how I'm doing and how I'm handling Taylor's death so well. And honestly, all I can say is God. And some people don't get it. Actually, most people simply don't get it at all. They look really confused when I say that. But in knowing God, I have such a strong grasp on peace. Don't think that I mean by knowing God, you'll be singing on top of rainbows every day in rain boots that'll never get wet. The most persecuted and tried believers a lot of times are those who truly know and follow God. In James 1:2-3, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." I hope that you get motivated and ready for what lies ahead. I say to you that you never know what tomorrow could bring and what today will offer. In the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren says, "You are as close to God as you choose to be. It takes desire, time, and energy. As a young person, I implore you to rise up and become a leader of men. Don't wait for a phone call to act on your faith. Act now."
Tell them where you work now.
Oh yeah, so I did just get a job at Tammy's Tea Cottage over there. So if anybody wants to come visit me at tea time.
You know, Michelle said so much, and I could probably stop right there, but I have some more story. You want to hear some more? Okay. So I'm going to go past high school a little bit. Taylor became a car mechanic. He had lots of interests. Is Jacob Zanders here? Is he here? Jacob's uncle was Taylor's last boss. Jacob, we love you. His boss is a strong believer and runs Heritage Auto over here. He only got to work there 3 months, but it was one of those gifts God gave him and us. But Taylor continued to see God as a creator in the outdoors, Idaho waters, fishing. One of my favorite things about Taylor that I just love, he would call me he's all the time, like 2 or 3 times a week. "Mama, guess what God did for me this week? Guess what God showed me today? Hey, Mama, can you pray for so-and-so? They really need prayer." What made Taylor really sad was that as he watched some of his friends grow up, is that they were not wanting anything to do with God. It amazed him how anyone could look at the creation we have here in Idaho and not see the handprint of God and know that they had a great creator who loved them. He wanted his friends so badly to have the helper he had in Christ. So one day, about 2 years ago, Taylor realized that he needed to put his life 100% all out for Jesus. He asked me to really pray that he would find purpose in his life and that God would give him a godly woman for a wife to join him on this adventure. There were 2 things he wanted most besides God, and that was a wife who loved him as God saw him, and a beautiful wedding with friends and family with a honeymoon in Maui. That was important. After that, he wanted to start a t-shirt business with his artwork with his dominoes. Shortly after he asked me to pray for a wife, God helped Taylor realize that his best friend, Michelle, would make the perfect wife. So our whole family was so grateful and thankful. And at Christmas time, they started making wedding plans last year. Taylor and Michelle wanted their marriage to be fully committed to Jesus and honor him with a godly marriage that was a mission to love others together. The night before their wedding, God put a rainbow above the barn at rehearsal. Michelle's mom's here today, and we were having some struggles with the event center, and we just were kind of frustrated, and it's too long of a story to tell you, but we turned around, and Mrs. Melhoff was standing there. She was at the other event there, and it just blessed us to see her and see all of her kids she taught, and then we turned around, and there was this rainbow over the barn. So on June 22nd, 2013, we had the veriest, happiest day of our lives. God put a special kiss on their wedding that made everyone feel the special presence of the Holy Spirit. We couldn't understand why it felt so happy. In fact, I felt guilty saying it was the happiest day of my life because I'd had other happy days in my life. But we now know that it was a special gift from God that we would need and could cherish later. You would think that a wedding would be for the couple getting married, but their wedding was an opportunity to serve us. It was part of their adventure in loving others. You could tell that each thing they planned was to honor God and all of us with the joy of their marriage. Our family could feel that special love from them, and we felt honored. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. I love this picture, even though it's a really ugly one of me on the right there. But Taylor and I were supposed to take swing dancing lessons, and we didn't ever get to it for various reasons. So he wanted me, he goes, Mama, we're going to do this really fancy, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. And I said, there's no way I can do that. He goes, yeah, you can, God will help you. So we did it, and that's that. We did it, look. It was really cool. I wish I had a video to show you, but anyway. So God worked through them and their creativity to give each person a fun, special time. Our family had never felt such joy before, and there we all are. Taylor got to go to Hawaii, and this picture on this one, okay, so Taylor really wanted to see this penguin. He heard there was a penguin in the hotel. And they walked blocks and blocks to try and find this hotel, and he finally found this penguin and had his picture taken with it. And then they were done. So when I thought about all of this that Taylor got to do in his last few months, I realized how good God was to Taylor to give him his dreams of being married to a wonderful woman, because he was in a car accident in January, and there was a policeman behind him on this icy road on State Street, and he said, you're really lucky to be here. He got hit 45 miles an hour, almost got T-boned. And then he was riding his bicycle 2 weeks before their wedding and got hit by a car. And I just saw how God saved his life through those so that he could have his ultimate dreams, and that was to be married to Michelle and have this wonderful wedding and honeymoon. God cares about the little things. After their wedding, we decorated their front yard. And I sent this text to them, and they were so happy with it. And Taylor sent me a text back, and I don't know if you in the library can read it, but it says, "Thank you so much for everything in life. I love you so much, Taylor." And normally Taylor would say, "Thanks for everything," or "Thanks for the wedding," but he said, "Thank you for everything in life." And after he died, I was thinking, oh, Lord, was I a good enough mom to Taylor?